DJs join up just organically, and we raised $32,000 to support the Equal Justice Initiative, the ACLU, the Bell Project, the Color of Change. Since then, we pivoted over to voting, and we partnered with Michelle Obama's voter registration nonprofit called When We All Vote. And we've been basically live streaming with our DJs, getting the word out around registering to vote, understanding where you can vote, early voting, mail-in balloting, all that. And so we've been just grinding on that for the last few months. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much for joining us today. This will really be a conversation about the importance of voting and what we're doing and the steps we can take to do more. So let's start with how important it is for people to vote this election year. Jeff said this is the most important election of his lifetime. And I know, I'll say, I have my entire voting life heard exactly that it's the most important election of our lifetime. And I want to talk about some differences.
Yeah, I felt Jefferson. The same way in 2008.
Right.
And I volunteered and I did a lot of activism around that. But you're right, it is the most consequential.
Yeah. So that's another thing. Maybe language is really important, I think, when getting messages to people that maybe don't necessarily engage in the process. Hearing it's the most important election of your life every 4 years definitely makes it diminish the importance a little, right?
It might. There's also a chance that the stakes are increasing. There's also a chance that actually what we're seeing is a trajectory that is contra democracy. And that in fact, it's not just recency bias. It's not just, oh, geez, it seems so much more important now because I forget how I felt 4 years ago. But in fact, that the arc of the dominant political party in the White House right now and the US Senate right now is fundamentally different than it was 100 years ago. And it has been in a changing trajectory every single election. There has been more at stake. There has been a greater difference. I don't think that's made up. But to take on your question about why I think it matters, I don't think it just matters because of presidential election, right? I have a sense of how, I live in Oregon, I have a sense how Oregon's going to vote. If the presidential race was the only or primary thing I was concerned about voting on, I do that out of my own sort of moral responsibility. I think I ought to do it out of civic duty, but where I actually think I might make a mathematical impact, I think there's more of a chance I'm going to make a mathematical impact on who the mayor of our town is right now. That's dead heat. I think there's more of a mathematical impact on whether we're going to pass independent police review, a measure was 26-217 for the first time ever. I'm going to have more of a chance to impact that thing. Our current governor, in fact, Morgan, this is how I'd put it in high relief. We talked about, you said what, 2000, you said 2008, I said 2004. Let's take 2000, where the presidency was decided by what, 527 votes in a Supreme Court in Florida.
Yep.
The current treasurer who's on the ballot in Oregon right now, a guy named Tobias Reed, another decent guy named Jeff Goodman. Tobias's first election, he won by, I think, 92 votes. Jeff Merkley is in the U.S. Senate right now. He's in the U.S. Senate. He was eligible really to run, in a position to run for the U.S. Senate because he was Speaker of the Oregon House. He was Speaker of the Oregon House because the Democrats controlled the House by one vote, 31-29. But wait, there's more. One of those seats is a guy named Jeff Barker. Jeff Barker won his first race by 47 votes. In fact, no, excuse me, it was 40. It was 40 even. It was 40 even. And that was one of the big races we got involved in. We had hundreds of kids be able to go around and say, hey, look, Mom, I changed Oregon history. And they were right. But let's even look more closely than that. The current governor of Oregon, Kate Brown, won her first election by 7 votes. Now, that's the same number of people. Anybody on this call right now could go and motivate 7 votes, right? I mean, that's like a couple of neighbors, that's your family members and a few friends. So when you think about what's at stake, it's not just what MSNBC or CNN or heck Fox, maybe not news, is covering. It's what's happening in our communities, what's happening in our cities, what's happening all over the country, including state legislatures all over the country. We're going to decide who draw the maps for who's in Congress, et cetera.
Yeah, gerrymandering certainly is a big issue to tackle. We probably don't want to get into that too deeply, but that's certainly something that's very important to me. And what we've looked at from Mix4Change, we started, raising money for Black Lives Matter in these different groups in June. and then pivoted over to getting people registered to vote. 100 million people that were eligible didn't vote in the last election. And you just move that needle a couple percentage points, and this could look completely different and more representative of what this democracy is supposed to be. So what we're looking, we're looking to educate, register, plan your vote, for first-time voters. I got a ballot here I'm in Oakland. I have a ballot here, which has 25 ballot initiatives on it. And they're all worded very carefully by lobbyists and the different stakeholders. And you have to reread it. Am I voting yes on this? Am I voting no on this? So it's complicated. And so what we were stressing is take the time out and make a plan to vote. And then once we get past the election, turnout's going to be important. Getting informed is going to be important. Once we get past the election, for us, for Mix4Change, we look at this as a place for DJs, as like the UNICEF or Greenpeace for DJs to use their platform for social good. Just like we do with Black Lives Matter, just like we did with When We All Vote right now with registering and informing voters. But we're looking at civic participation going forward. If you've been activated by all this messaging and you're pumped up, ready to go, fired up and ready to go, as Wilbon would say, you want to take that momentum and build towards actually implementing some of the changes that you want to see as a nation and as a community. So, and that goes down to the local level, and it goes all the way to the national level. And even DJs internationally are reaching out to us. So that's basically our thrust in how we're trying to, bring more awareness around these issues.
Absolutely. Perfect segue into some of the key things we need to do to know who we should be voting for. Both of you guys made a great point of speaking locally. And in Oregon, our voter pamphlets are, I learned, I'll say I have voted in Oregon always. And our voter pamphlet is something that I swear by and live by, and it is so incredibly helpful, and something that we had before you could easily consult the internet. Other places don't have that, shocking. And they will send out a ballot with absolutely no information on what's happening, what the measure means. I think especially today, where people have far less connection to local news. And if you don't have cable and you've cut the cord and you just watch Netflix or YouTube or whatever, you may not have any idea who's running, So the voter pamphlet is really helpful. What do we do for people outside of Oregon that don't get that?
For us, we partnered with Ballot Ready, which basically it's a technology platform where if you go to mix4change.com on our Get Informed page and you enter your address, it'll automatically populate everything that's on your ballot from the federal level, state, county, local councilman, every ballot initiative. And you can literally read through it all to do it. And so Rock the Vote has used this technology. When We All Vote using it. LeBron's More Than a Vote is using it as well. Those types of tools, which I thought were unimaginable because of the fragmentation from state to state years ago, they've been able to streamline it where you can put in your address and get a lot of this information right in front of you. Find your polling place, get the rules for mail-in voting, deadlines. So I'd recommend using any of those tools on those sites that's powered by Ballot Ready, that basically gives you everything you need to know, and you can just download it straight to your phone and walk into the ballot box and be ready to go and be informed.
Jefferson, as a former legislator, are there some tips or tricks that you can give us in figuring out what that language, that coded language that gets used by lobbyists?
Yeah, I asked Ben Cannon. I copied off my neighbor's homework. So no, I'll say, and I think I say that partly to be silly, but not entirely. All of us use proxies to make decisions. None of us are. I mean, heck, somebody's in the state. You said the state legislature. We're in the state legislature. I think maybe was it 2,200 bills got proposed in a single legislative session. There's nobody's going to be able to read the text of 2,200. If that's all they did, if they decided not to sleep, not to eat, not to spend time with their families, not to be in committee hearings, not to vote on the floor, if the only thing they did was read bills, they still wouldn't read all the bills. So
Right.
ultimately, what they have to do is follow the crowd at chow time. Ultimately, what they have to do is find a trusted friend who can help them identify or find some tools. Let's start with some tools to narrow down the decisions they actually have to drill into, right? Because some of those are sort of easy, right? Some of those things you look at the first few words, okay, I know that deal, but I might not know this one. So for me, on a real tough one, I'd talk to the least mobbed up legislator I knew who sat closest to me, and I said, man, what is this thing really like? Who actually wants this thing? Because sometimes it'd be a weird one. Like there's something about power lines, whether they can put in power lines in a particular pathway with a different set of rules. And I'm like, well, what's this really about? And he can say, okay, well, here's what's really about. What it's really about is that landowners are a little concerned that people are going to dig into their land. You can worry about them. But the bigger thing is you got these power companies that are trying to be able to make more profit, and they're going to try to make a rule so that they can take that land without compensating people for that land. And so then I can make a decision, but I use a trusted friend to help me to find that one. Or I go to somebody who's on the committee and I say, hey, you were on this committee. I'm not. What was the testimony here? Now, proxies for people in another context, love what I heard my colleagues say. I think voter guide technology, taking national voter guide tools to be able to localize them, hugely helpful. I find, voters pamphlet, you mentioned it, I brought mine. I find the voters pamphlet very helpful.
We've actually had a ballot party with our pod where we went through that document for California.
Yeah.
Went through each proposition and we debated it, looked up, we all divided and conquered and looked up different opposing viewpoints around it and spent over an hour, multiple hours doing it. Those are the types of steps that you need, is to have a conversation, and we might not agree and we'll have different points of view. You don't want to be in a bubble either, where everyone's just going to come from the same perspective. But these ballot parties, these ballot kind of conversations around the technocratic way that they put this together, I think it's very, very helpful.
And I'll throw out one more. The thing I was getting to was affiliations. So we think of a democracy as it's not only not a spectator sport, it's not an individual enterprise. It is a community enterprise. It's something that we do together. We don't need to figure it out all our own. We can figure it out with affiliate groups. We can find out what are core values and then connect with people. It doesn't mean we'll always agree with them, but we can connect with people who share some of those core values, and they can help give us some indications. That's not just cheating off somebody's homework. That's like the good part. That's what we're supposed to be doing. How OG1 and I met was we first connected. We had met prior, but we first connected was involved in Hip Hop Voter back in 2004, and went to the Hip Hop Voter Convention in Washington, D.C. and and saw a group of people affiliating around a set of common values, right? That wasn't the exact same common values as any single political party. It definitely affiliated with one more than the other, to be clear, but it didn't agree with the dominant power structure of that party all the time. And that affiliation, I think, is one of the things we have to do. It's not just sort of all of us are atomized left to our own devices. Find those things that you care about, affiliate with those groups, and those groups can help guide you a little bit as one tool.
I think everything you both said is absolutely perfect for what we need to be getting people to understand, but also goes against what we're taught from the beginning of don't talk about politics. Don't bring it up. That's a thing you don't do, right? And I think that definitely lended itself to where we are today, where we have to have something like a ballot party so that people understand what's happening with it, and how important it is to hold on to those affiliations, make those affiliations, and understand what they mean in the longer term.
It's a polarizing subject.
It goes against what we're told, right? Don't talk about politics.
Yeah,
You're on your own.
We did a party, like I said, with Jazzy Jeff last night, and there's been DJs that come back to us that are like, I don't do politics. And our response is, this isn't politics. This is just registering to vote. I don't care who you vote for. I mean, obviously I have my preferences, and probably all you do as well, but it's about participation. The 100 million people that didn't vote, that don't think it matters. We need to change that conversation with each other, where it doesn't seem taboo and it doesn't need to be polarizing. And so I've seen that with some DJs, and they're just like, nope, I can't do it. I have I have my sponsorship deal with so and so, and I don't want to risk that. And so you just need to elevate the conversation to a point where it's not about politics. It's about contributing in your democracy, basically.
Morgan, I'll take something from 200 years ago and I'll take something from 20 seconds ago. So I'll start with 20 seconds ago. Social media dominating so much of the media conversation generally. And what tends to stick in our brains more, because we remember 4 times as well negative stuff than positive stuff, is finding the arguments that divide us. And in fact, we think that how to talk about politics is to try to find the division, find the issue, find where we will locate the fight. In fact, pick that fight. When we talk about politics, I hope that what we will do, and I'll get back to this, is also find the commonality. Mm-hmm. Now, look, let me go back to 200 years.
Start there. Yeah.
200 years ago, Alexis de Tocqueville came and looked at this country and he said, the United States is an amazing thing. They actually might make this democracy sort of work. And he wrote a paper about it. And he said, but the strongest thing about it is not that they have an elected king. It's not that they have a separate legislature. It's not they have an independent judiciary. It's not even that they have an independent media operation. It's that they have an engaged, active electorate. They talked about politics in bars. The best parts of the country, including when we started doing a better job and we bent the arc of history towards justice and against oppression, was not because we shut up, it's because we spoke out. But when we speak out, to try to find common values, not to tell people why they're stupid, dumb, and evil, because then they're not going to come with you, but try to find, wait a minute, you actually care about humanity? You care about these lives matter. You actually care about fairness? Okay, well, let's make sure we don't have the biggest wealth disparities that we've had in the history of the country. You care about your family? Let's make sure we don't burn the whole planet down. If you can start with shared values, not only on disagreement, I think we have a chance to make democracy do the thing it's supposed to do, which is solve problems.
Yeah, and it's easier to just simplify them into wedge issues, right? For
Certainly.
People. And so it takes effort from all of us to find that common ground. And
it's like forward. The reality show of our lives, right? That just finding the political wedge issues is what keeps people engaged in the fight of that, but not the rest of it. Right. So what are some of the misconceptions surrounding the voting process? What do you guys find most challenging when trying to engage people to vote?
I think I spoke to that before around just like the polarization and like the hot button topic of politics is tough for our DJs and their fans. The other thing that's a major issue is the fragmentation from state to state. Every state has different rules, and it's dictated by the Secretary of State in that state, and that Secretary of State is generally appointed by the governor, or elected with the governor. And so if you have a Republican state, they believe in one perspective, and if you have a Democratic state, it's another. And the rules are so different, and it's so hard to decipher as a voter. When can I early vote? Can I mail in a vote? Is there drop boxes? And some states are doing, one extreme, and some states are doing the other. So that fragmentation I feel like is the biggest challenge in information for voters. Depending on where you live.
Morgan, I guess I'd say some immediate and then some future or even radical. So the immediate, maybe the first thing I said, which is a misconception that the most important decisions that a given voter are going to make are the presidential election, the thing that's on 24-hour cable news the most. I don't think that's the most important decision. It might be the most important decision the country makes, but it might not be the most important decision a given voter makes, because in so many of the states, their state's probably going to go another way by more than 1,000 votes or so. And I went over that. A couple others, though, and that is that it has to be hard, that there actually should be barriers in front of it, that we, in fact, should suppress votes, and that there need to be hurdles that one can pass over in order to exercise the franchise. That is absurd. There should be a national consensus, sure as hell, a 75% supermajority in favor of democracy, in favor of the fact that if you paid your debts to society, you can vote. that if you are a human being, you shouldn't have to take a whole day off work to be in line for 10 hours in order to control your own government, that you could in fact get your ballot delivered to you, not have to catch a communicable disease in order to vote and pass that thing in. That the idea that we need to have barriers in the way of voting is an oppressive idea. And I don't only mean that it has oppressive impacts. I mean, it has oppressive roots. It is there so that people couldn't participate, so they couldn't run their own government. And very specifically, the Black community, very specifically, people of color, very specifically, women, that the reason to have voter registration in the first place is you could make sure it was a white property owning male. Okay, that was how, okay, well, now let's make sure that only those people vote. Screw that. I think the biggest misconception is that we should just accept it how it is and not work to actually bend the arc of history towards democracy. The other one is, I'll save for another question. It's a little more radical about how we might transform our political system entirely, but that gets beyond the scope of this question. Maybe
I feel like it should be, potentially election day should be either on a Sunday or it should be a national holiday. Facebook, a lot of these tech companies are giving all their employees off on this day. And so that's one piece to the solution, right? To give people time to go vote, which we don't currently see. And it's a simple fix, and it doesn't make sense to have it on the first Tuesday of November. It should be, when everyone has accessibility to the polls.
Right, and I think the only way to make that equitable is not necessarily the day of the week, but having a national day off where we are not talking about the economy booming that day. It doesn't matter. People are supposed to be going to vote. That's it.
This is exactly why we're laser focused on early vote week of action starting this weekend, and we are running it all week. All the, like I said, 200 DJs, thousands of hours of streams, that informing people that you can go vote now. And there's a variety of ways to do that. You can find that out on our website. And October voting should be more in the collective consciousness than election day, just because of these issues, So
Absolutely.
that's what we're laser focused on, and especially with the pandemic. That's even more tantamount.
I mean, we're definitely in a state in Oregon that was prepared for that portion of the pandemic, like we had that infrastructure in place. And so we're lucky for that. But so many other states did not. And instead of spending that time working towards a working system that could handle that, we argued about if it was the right thing to do or not. And I think that that's one of the big things that the media gets wrong, focusing on those wedge issues instead of actually what it means. Deciding, that decided a lot for a lot of states. That decided how their voting would go. And it's
a lot to clean
devastating.
Up.
Yeah, it's devastating.
And it wasn't just an argument. Let's be clear. And I know that what we want to emphasize is voting over any particular political result. But I do think we have to be honest about the thing that at some point, a political party has now made the decision that they want fewer people to vote. And that political party has put a particular person in the president's office. And that guy can't win. He can't win. In fact, that party can't govern because they haven't updated their viewpoint. Democratic Party had to update their viewpoint because they're a bunch of racists. And they said, okay, well, maybe the nation's changed. Maybe we should change a little bit too. And unless the Republican Party changes, the only way for them to hold power is to have a U.S. Senate that'll put in judges that'll override things that a Congress does and a president does that the people elect. That's the only chance they've got. So it's going to have to take a 75% transpartisan movement in favor of democracy to do those things, including what I just heard, what Scott said, including online voter registration, including vote by mail, including voting centers. So it's not just people who are closest to the county seat who have a chance to vote. So there's somewhere pretty close, maybe even walking or biking distance from your house, that there are, heck yes, a national holiday around voting, that we do have same day voter registration so that you can register on that same day right before, and that there's a voting period, not a voting day. And I'm a big fan of the National Voter Registration Day, but in fact, a voting period period. You can do it on your time and make
Mhm.
sure that young people, because otherwise, let's be clear, what's actually happening is trying to make sure that young people and people of color don't have their say in the country. And already people under the age of 18 can't vote. So that group of people between 18 and 35, they've got to have their voice heard. Otherwise, we're just not get the right answer. We're just not going to actually get the will of the people exercised in the country, which is supposed to be the point.
Oh, reggae horns or something.
Pew, pew, pew.
There we go. Thank you, Scott. So we just kind of went over one of the questions I was going to ask, all of the different ways that you can vote, but checking your voting status. I know I got the text message that said your ballot is on its way to you. And then once you receive it, you'll be able to check the status of it. And voting locations are really easy to find in your area using the internet. What other resources are available for checking your status?
Yeah, this Ballot Ready is a good place, and Ballot Ready has been integrated into When We All Vote, Rock the Vote, More Than a Vote, which is LeBron's thing. It's everywhere, but they also have their standalone website, ballotready.org, where you can go check your status, and you can also track your ballot once you send it in. And so they've integrated with multiple systems. Very impressive. And then there's local ones as well that you'd have to research by your state. But I've been, I'm all about simplicity, and I know this, like with the 25 ballot initiatives that we're like having a ballot party and we're like arguing about is hard enough, and you want to simplify that through some kind of portal that tells you, oh, my ballot is, my polling place is here, or my ballot is been processed, etc. So that's what I would recommend. Curious to get your thoughts, Jefferson.
I think you covered it well. I think both of you covered it well. For people who are who near where this conference, although I guess it's now for the world because everything is by Zoom and online, we're all just TV players. But for people in Oregon, well, for people who aren't in Oregon, and for people who end up watching this video, push your state legislature to start moving in a pro-democracy direction. Right? You don't have to talk about political party if you don't want to. Just say, I'm a pro-democracy voter. We are pushing for democracy. And here's a pro-democracy agenda. And then pick the thing that other pro-democracy voters in your state need to accomplish. If you don't have a voter's pamphlet, go push for a voter's pamphlet. If you think you can get a state holiday, get a state holiday. If you're going to push for vote by mail, push for vote by mail. If you don't have online voter registration, push for online voter registration and push that thing. And the nice thing about online voter registration, nice thing about Motor Voter and then updated Motor Voter, one of the things I worked on as a younger and better looking person, was if you can get that data, if you can actually get that system on, that it's easy for Morgan and I, who both live in Portland, to go online and say, oh yeah, I'm in there. Right. And I need to vote. I need to update my registration. One thing we still have in Oregon that's a problem is we still have a deadline by which to do that, which is, far too before the election day. And that's not just because of vote by mail. That's because we had a Republican Secretary of State who blamed it on the Rajneeshis, but it was actually an early move to try to keep people from having a chance to get their ballot if they caught on late. And let's dwell on that for a moment for any of our Oregonian friends, that the people who start catching on late are the people who don't yet have voting habits, the people who don't yet have a bunch of friends who are democracy nerds. The name of I'm pointing at the wrong screen, sort of the podcast that we started. People like me are sort of pointy headed and, care about this stuff all the time. Are people who are new voters, people who just started, went to a show that Mix4Change was at and said, oh, I'm going to start caring about this. I better register. And by the time they're aware of it, by the time there's even been a presidential debate in our state, oh, sorry, too late. You can't register now. It's absurd. We should have voter registration deadlines that are on election day. You wouldn't say, right, okay, everybody, we're going to start doing this ad blitz. And then, but you have to buy your ticket to the movie. You have to buy the iPhone before the ad blitz starts. Okay, so we're going to do the ad blitz. We're going to start the ad blitz on October 15th. That's when everybody's going to be paying attention. But you won't be able to get your iPhone. You won't be able to go see the new Avengers movie unless you bought a ticket a week ago. It's absurd. The only reason you'd set that up is that you didn't want people to see the movie. If you didn't want people to actually get their iPhone. I want a movement. We need a movement that wants people to get their democracy.
Yeah, I stood in line for Avengers ticket. Very proud of that.
So we'll hit our last question, and then we have time after our last question, but I want to make sure that we talk about this for sure. Because both of you have access to all of this. How important is it for artists, musicians, creatives, entertainers to use their platforms to promote voting? I think, Scott, you already hit it, that some people are hesitant because they think voting equals politics. And like I was speaking to earlier, we're taught to not speak about politics and what we think. And so those things get intermixed and conflated. But the importance of people with a platform, I think we really want to go over the responsibility that comes with that comes with people looking up to you and looking for your opinion on things. And I'll just say, before you guys start talking, I am old enough to remember, Rasheed Wallace playing basketball here and saying that he was not going to in any way be a role model for anyone. That wasn't what he did. He played basketball. And I remember at the time being like, damn right. You don't want to be a role model, don't be one. But I was young and stupid, I think, at that point and in my life. And I think now it is almost irresponsible for you not to use that platform to change for the better. So
Charles,
whatever your better is. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, Charles Barkley, I think, was the first
certainly.
to say I'm not the role model.
Yeah.
And Rasheed Wallace took
I was
that
just I was just trying to keep it local.
That's funny.
But you're right. He definitely originated. I'm sure someone else said that.
We do not see teams other than the Blazers, okay? We don't.
Other teams exist.
We'll have a conversation about Steph or Dame after this.
Okay.
Anyway, what I've been seeing with DJs and with everyone, I feel like all of us, we're all stuck in our homes, and we're all reflecting on a lot of things, and it's personal. It's where am I going with my life? Things like that. I don't want to get too deep on this discussion, but what we've seen is DJs that would never ever think about anyone but, I don't want to say anyone but themselves, or like they're in Vegas, they're DJing parties in Vegas, they're living the fast life. And what this pandemic and what brought us together to make Mix4Change, has, it's been kind of forced upon all of us to kind of really think about like what our platforms are and how we can utilize them to not just make money. It's more about, there's like social issues, and there's a number of them, right? They're all kind of moot if we don't vote, if we don't pull that out of the toolbox. There's many things in the toolbox for civic participation. Voting is a big one. Protesting is another. Writing your congressman is another. Change.org. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And so I think it's made artists, and specifically for us, our DJs, for the first time, start thinking about how can I help, impact change and improve the situation that we're in. And so that's going to shift, and that's come naturally out of the pandemic, and Mix4Change has come naturally out of the pandemic. And we're looking at Mix4Change as, like I mentioned, like the Greenpeace or the UNICEF of the DJ culture going forward. And it's, that could be police reform going forward, that could be climate change, that could be just general civic participation. So we're looking at this as a 30-year thing. So hopefully that the DJs stay involved, and it feels like there's been an awakening within all the artistic community from people that weren't necessarily already active, like a Janelle Monáe, that are now participating. And so that's been really, really great to hear. A lot of the stuff that we're doing, registering voters, giving them info, polling info, there's other organizations doing it, right? Rock the Vote's doing it, and we're not working with them directly. And so when we reach out to a DJ and we say, we're doing Mix4Change, can you do a stream? They say, oh, I'm already doing something. And we're like, awesome. As long as
Great,
we're all
do this
moving
too.
and we're all moving the same direction, that is great. I mean, we're not, I'm more focused on the change than the mix, and so I've seen that there's been a dramatic shift in the consciousness of the whole artistic community and specifically DJs, which is really inspiring. Hopefully, we build more change off of this after the election.
So I'll co-sign essentially everything I just heard, and I'll start my response with a story. So a decade and a half ago, there was an effort punk voter, and they came to town, and a guy named Fat Mike, who's the front man for NoFX, came to the press conference with me.
I love that dude.
Yeah, and my message was, voting isn't only for dorks like me; it's also for cool guys like Fat Mike. And I'd actually written Fat Jeff on my stomach. And so afterwards I lifted up my shirt and it said Fat Jeff, except I'd made 3 mistakes. The first is that I had written in permanent marker. The second is I was very pale and out of shape. And the third is I had in fact misspelled my first name. So it said there for weeks, Fat Jeef. And I was walking downtown Portland, and a kid, sort of punky looking kid, looked across the street downtown. He said, "Hey, Fat Jeef, what's up, man?" I think that artists being engaged in the public thing, artists being engaged in democracy is tied for our only chance, right? It's tied for our only chance because they came to watch Fat Mike. They didn't come to see, the dork like me. And so it's partly about democracy. We need it. It's critical. It's one of the reasons I thank OG1 so much for even including this part. I know that the voting panel is never the most popular panel at a music conference. People go to the music panel, right? But including the voting panel, making sure part of the culture is in fact wielding power, that part of the culture is in fact making the world better. Part of the culture is in fact exercising the franchise. That is critical. And I don't think it's only critical for democracy. I think it's critical for art. And let me say so. Let me say why. So hip hop is the most important art form in the world in the last 50 years. Okay. To what will it be applied? What is its essence? What are its purposes? What is its function? How will that power be directed? That is not for me to say, but there is a lot riding on that answer. And if it is only for commerce, if it is only for, the first mainstream hip hop ad I saw was Ice Cube selling St. Ides. If it is only for selling products, then we are missing something. I think the art is missing something, not for me to say, but a lot is riding on it. That matters for democracy, and I think it matters for art too.
Yeah, and you see this with a lot of MCs, younger guys that said they never voted before, and they're voting this time in this election. And it's like They're realizing that it's not a lightning rod issue. It doesn't need to be that. It could be just participate, or you have no voice, right? And if you have the apathetic perspective to it, like my vote doesn't count, that's not
and it never will.
Us. Yeah, it never will. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And if you start voting, or you start having these parties, around your ballot, or you're just pushing for voter registration and getting out the vote, like OG1 is doing, all that builds right into a place where people are more engaged, more knowledgeable, and this doesn't feel like a lightning rod issue, like it's like politics or not, And so I think we're making good progress in a tough situation, to be honest. And so I thank OG1 for putting this together.
Hey, I wanted to jump in here real quick as relates to that. One of the challenges for me, being a DJ, being an influencer, I would say, particularly in this market, has been the whole dialogue about, being a talent versus being someone that is impactful. And so if I look at hip hop, it's no secret that hip hop is the most influential genre of music in the world. But if you look at the birth of where it came out of wanting to, through music or whatnot, to paint a picture of the issues that, inner cities were dealing with. poor people were dealing with. At that time, it was, it was used like this is kind of the platform that gives us a voice,
which is political. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to make sure that everyone understands that is political. That is politics. Giving your life story and what's happening in your neighborhood is politics. All of it is.
Absolutely. So with that said, one of the challenges, one of my charges for any entertainer, I don't care if it's Portland or otherwise, particularly in the hip hop community, don't complain about it. Don't complain about the issues or just talk about it in your songs if you're not going to position yourself where your voice is most effective. I think bringing the issues to the forefront is important, but if you don't actually leverage that and have a call to action, so I could talk about voting all I want. I can use this panel and say, "Oh yeah, I'm talking about voting and bringing the issues up." But if I don't go and actually register and go vote, then what's the point?
Yeah, and Barack Obama spoke to this. He's like, we can't treat it as an errand to run. It's not an errand. This is your duty as a citizen. And so I think, in going back to like politics, when people hear artists hear politics, like, I don't do politics, because what they think of politics is Fox News versus MSNBC talking heads. Right. And it reminds me of like the brand. It's like the branding of it. It's more about civic participation. Maybe there's a better word for it than that would land with people, but it also reminds me of this conversation around defund the police. And defund the police is a lightning rod in its brand, but what it actually means in the meat and the bones is just reallocating resources. Right?
Is what it means in the bones.
And so people stick to defund the police and they're like, there's not going to be any cops. We have to be smart about how we, contextualize this, right? In the same way that we need to do that with defund the police and in politics. Like, politics makes you seem like I'm on this tribe and you're on that tribe, or I'm on this team, you're on that team. No, it's just being active. It's activism, things like that. Those are the types of words that we should be using. I think that will get people, more inclined to participate.
I'll throw a word for the parlance. It's made it easier for me to, when I'm talking to somebody about what I'm hoping they might get engaged in, is I just use the word for democracy. I just say democracy. Let's be pro-democracy voters. I'm not asking you to pick a political fight. I'm asking you to help engage in democracy. And that where 78% of the people around the world are in support of representative democracy. Now, that's not 100%, but that is almost everybody. That is more than 3/4 of the folks. And and we can't just take that for granted. We've been taking it for granted a little bit too long. And that means that anti-democracy forces who don't want to admit it, but that's what they are, is they don't want democracy to be in charge. What they want is, it goes back to the Magna Carta, Morgan. It goes back to this. We've been having this fight for tens of thousands of years. As soon as the strongest person in a tribe realized if he beat everybody up, that he could be in charge. And then he could be told a story about why he was justified for doing that, and why he was justified for being in charge, and he could oppress others. We've been talking about this ever since we decided that we could transfer land to the next generation, and whoever owned that land got to be in charge of what was on it. And we called that person, if they had a whole lot of that, we called them a king. We've been having this conversation for a long, long time. And since the Magna Carta, there's been a debate about who should be in charge, the people who own the most, or the people by virtue of being people, which includes people who own the most, but also includes everybody else. And that's the big fight. And we want everybody to be included in the conversation. We want everybody to have a chance, everybody to be able to weigh in. And that idea, not everybody's for it, but almost everybody's for it. And I think it's worth saying, okay, we can argue about politics, but let's at least agree on democracy.
Yeah, and this isn't a 30-day fight, or 17 nowadays till election day. This is a 30-year fight.
Yeah, it's a generation. We got to do it for our lives.
Incremental progress. And I think we're all after coming out of this experience, I feel there's a movement in the country to be more engaged. So I appreciate you guys putting this all together to help push that forward.
I can't thank you guys enough for joining us. This was great for me. I hope it was enlightening for other people watching it. Scott, I'm going to ask you one more time. Give us the website for Mix4Change so that people can use it. We already have ballotready.org.
So Mix4Change, as it's spelled right there with the number 4.com. And there you can register to vote. You can get informed through Ballot Ready by entering your address. It'll give you all of your initiatives down to the councilman level. And it'll also give you a chance, if you're a DJ out there, if you want to join the cause, you can join up. Next week, we're all about early voting. And however you want to do that, whether it's mail-in, drop-off, and it's just in person, that's what we're focused on. So all the support that we can get to push that message out, we'd appreciate it. And so we're ready to go. And hopefully you guys can tune in to some of the streams next week.
Absolutely. Jefferson, tell us where we can find Democracy Nerd so that we can learn more.
This would suggest that I know how the internet works, and I have some idea. Okay, I have some idea how it works. But like, I said de Tocqueville and I said Magna Carta. I think I might be
a lot today.
I think I'm on Friendster, or MySpace. I think I'm still sort of.
I'm a philosophy, political science major, so I read all that at Rutgers.
But you also have the other side. You also have the other side, right? I can't. If Alexis de Tocqueville gets a Facebook page, I'm all in. No, you can find Democracy, I think, by Googling it. I think we're on your favorite podcast app. I think you can find a couple of interviews on, and to be clear, we talk to nerdy, we talk to political science professors who've written a book. We make it accessible. I think it's interesting. People would like it, but yeah, check out Democracy Nerd. I think we're launching a website, probably democracynerd.org. But you can check xray.fm, which is a radio station where a lot of good stuff happens. And I will plug a group, Alliance for Youth Action, which spawned out of here in Portland. Now is a national organization with lots of local affiliates, and you can find that at allianceforyouth.org.
Thank you so much, you guys. I am Morgan Jones of the Unrefined Sophisticates. I'm honored to have been able to have this conversation with you both. DJ OG1, thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you. And again, thank you guys for participating in this. And for those that are tuning in, we're not done yet. I got to pack up, get out of here, and get down to the Holocene, where we're going to be going live stream with a lineup of amazing talent. So you want to make sure that you tell all your friends to log on to portlandblackmusicexpo.com. 6 p.m. We're going to be going live stream with a host of talent. We're going to be going from 6 p.m. to midnight. That's how long we're going to be partying. Make sure that you get the word about voting. Make sure you follow Mix4Change and these incredible panelists. And again, I appreciate everyone that is tuned in, but we got work to do. So we're going to let y'all kind of come hang out with us and relax and hear some good music and catch some good vibes for a good purpose. So again, panelists, I thank you, and we out.
Salute.